What's going on, guys? Welcome back. Thank you so much if you have watched the Victor Munoz video that was there previously. If you haven't watched that already, make sure to jump over and have a look at that as I break down one of the more exciting signings of Liverpool's summer transfer window. And now today what we're going to be doing is breaking down the more, I'd say, recent signing. Not so much recent signing. It happened in January and now he's arrived at the club where Liverpool have spent £60 million, a £55 million base fee and then a £5 million bonus fee for Stade Rennais 20-year-old defender Jérémy Jacquet. So let's get into it, let's break it down and let's have a look at how he is and how he is as a player, how he's going to perform in this Andoni Iraola Liverpool side and how his profile is going to fit. Before we do that though, make sure to like, subscribe, follow me on all my socials. I really appreciate it. Link is in the description of the video. So without further ado, let's get into it. So Liverpool, people forgot about this. They made another really competitive defensive signing. But unlike the arrivals of the likes of Van Dijk or maybe even the likes of Konaté, I'd imagine there's a vast majority of Liverpool fans that have probably never watched Jérémy Jacquet play. But I am here to solve that problem. I am here to tell you how he is going to fit into this side. I am here to give you all of the information on him. So at 20 years old, nearly 6'2" tall, Jérémy Jacquet was a starting centre-back in a back three and sometimes in a back four for Stade Rennais and is one of the most intriguing young centre-backs on the market in Europe. Aggressive defensively, statistically profiles very different to many defenders his age, but that is a good thing. He is a unicorn. So, the obvious question that a lot of Liverpool fans are going to have is, who exactly is Jérémy Jacquet? And perhaps more importantly, what kind of centre-back have Liverpool signed? So today what we're going to do is we are going to break down all of the statistical data regarding Jérémy Jacquet, how he plays, why he plays the way he does, and how stylistically and his profile will fit into this new Liverpool side under Andoni Iraola that places a serious amount of emphasis on ball progression from his centre-backs while also being unbelievably competent defenders. So let's get into it. So let's take a look at him from a statistical standpoint. Jérémy Jacquet is still so incredibly young. He's only 20 years old and has played over 1,600 minutes in Ligue 1 for Stade Rennais, which gives us a good, meaningful sample size to take a look at and analyse. Standing at just over 6'1" tall at 188 centimetres, he's not the towering 6'5", 197 centimetre defender that you would normally associate with modern centre-backs, but he is athletic, he's quick, he covers ground, he screams extremely well and is comfortable in defending large spaces. Immediately, one thing that stands out from his overall profile is that while he doesn't necessarily excel or look elite in any one aspect of his game, if you take a look at his creation, progressive and defensive numbers, he's well above average in statistical data for all of these. Passing accuracy, ball progression, chance creation through passing, defensive actions, progressive carries and progressive actions. Very few aspects of his game that you would warrant with a good on-ball defender or ball-playing centre-back fall below average. Now, this balance is often what separates defenders that can fit into elite possession-based teams from defenders who simply dominate physically. You need to be an elite defender in a possession-based side in order to play for this Liverpool team. And as you can see, Jérémy Jacquet ranks unbelievably highly across his creation via carries, his creation via passes, his progressive ability both through carrying the ball and passing the ball. His defensive duels can use a little bit of work. He lacks some small discipline issues there, but that's really something that is more decision making that hampers him rather than actual skill that hampers him. He also would be involved in an awful lot more defensive duels because of the status of Stade Rennais and how they would play. And if you look at the possession models where his active defending, which will be possession adjusted, says 72nd percentile there for a young defender, to be so good at so many aspects of the game, it's just phenomenal to have him as a Liverpool player. One of the biggest questions that is asked of any Liverpool defender is fairly simple. Can you play under pressure? Liverpool, and very specifically Andoni Iraola, ask their centre-backs to do so much more than defend. They have to be able to start attacks, they have to be able to break opposition presses, they have to be able to progress the ball and progress possessions consistently and efficiently. This is where Jérémy Jacquet becomes particularly interesting. So let's take a look. When you look at the expected threat build-up versus progressive actions chart, you can see Jérémy Jacquet sits comfortable above average in both categories. Look where he sits. Look who's right beside him. Virgil van Dijk and Ibrahima Konaté. And if you take a look at some of the other options that are available around him, obviously you have your massive outliers in Marco Senesi, Jean-Paul Van Hecke, Dean Huijsen, Nico Schlotterbeck. Even if you take a look at somebody who I think Liverpool will be signing next summer in Jarell Quansah, you can very clearly see the model of centre-back that Liverpool are currently looking to have in the team. Now, take a look at a couple of the people that are around him as well that are lesser than him. You can see over to the left there, you've Luka Vuskovic, who was just signed by Brighton after Van Hecke was sold. You then have Lenny Yoro, you've Gabriel Magalhaes, you've William Saliba, you've Rudiger, you've Ruben Diaz, you've Harry Maguire, all lesser than Jérémy Jacquet. So this is where his profile becomes particularly interesting. He's producing strong expected threat during build-up while also recording over 4 progressive actions per 90 minutes. He is surrounded by names like, as I mentioned, Virgil van Dijk, Ibrahima Konaté, Mark Guéhi, people that you would associate with being good ball progressor. It's impressive company to have. He's not at the absolute elite level that I mentioned of your Jean-Paul Van Hecke, your Dean Huijsen, your Nico Schlotterbeck, your Bastonis. However, he's only 20. If this is his floor, imagine what his ceiling is. So to sit comfortably alongside the likes of Virgil van Dijk and Ibrahima Konaté, who are among some of the best defenders, specifically Virgil van Dijk, it's so important that he is comfortably inside the group of defenders who actively improve possession rather than simply recycling it and just playing it back and forth between the centre-back. For Liverpool, that is an extremely important distinction. Now when we look at his passing style, his passing sonar reveals even more than this. He simply just isn't playing 5-yard passes between centre-backs. Instead, we can consistently see diagonal passing into wide areas both in the defensive third and the midfield third. He also plays insane amounts of progressive vertical passes into the midfield, regularly switches play towards fullbacks either side, which is going to be an instrumental part of Liverpool's style if we now get pace on the outside of either wing. Imagine Virgil van Dijk's passes over the top to Mohamed Salah. Now envision that it's Jérémy Jacquet doing the same thing. He also is just phenomenal in the defensive third with just a vast array, a fan almost of his progressive passes that you can see there. But what is one thing that is particularly encouraging is in the defensive third there's such a willingness to break the lines, which you can see with that verticality of passing that's there. And not only that, but many of the passes in these directions have a positive expected pass over performance. Now, if you don't know what that means, essentially, in other words, he is completing a vast amount of passes that are statistically harder than average. This would suggest good technical execution rather than purely safe decision making. What basically he is doing, he is weighing up risk versus reward, and even when the risk is greater than the reward, he is still getting the reward at the end of it. Liverpool under Arne Slot previous to this would have loved this kind of a centre back, and now it stings even more true with Andoni Iraola, who is paramount on having his defenders be ball progressors, that Jérémy Jacquet now comes into this Liverpool side. Liverpool want capable defenders of manipulating the press and progressing the ball both vertically and diagonally. Jérémy Jacquet is already showing great signs of being that type of a player. Okay, so possession is only half of the story. Liverpool also need defenders capable of surviving in transition. So that is a key component. Liverpool last season were one of the biggest teams that were most susceptible to chances conceded and shots conceded through transition and counter-attacks. So Liverpool need defenders capable of surviving in transition. So let's take a look at his defensive action VAP versus expected threat metrics. They tell us two things. He is comfortably above average in both of these as well. He is on par for the same expected threat defended as the likes of Ibrahima Konaté, Virgil, Jean-Paul Van Hecke, Marco Senesi, greater than Gabriel Magalhaes, much better than the likes of Harry Maguire, William Saliba, Schlotterbeck, Kwanzaa, Bastoni, Mark Gahey and Lenny Yoro. And the only one that he wouldn't really be better than is, well, the greatest centre-back that's ever put on a pair of boots in Virgil van Dijk. So it tells you two things. He's making valuable defensive contributions, and his defensive contributions are genuinely preventing expected threat and reducing opposition danger. That's an important difference. Some defenders accumulate tackles because they're constantly out of position. Jérémy Jacquet's defensive actions tend to prevent attacks from developing altogether. That makes him an efficient defender rather than simply just an active one. And that's a key component. You can't be just a bit of a busy idiot that is just running around and putting in tackles left and right. Yes, it looks good on the eye, but if you're just running around putting in tackles willy-nilly left and right, but nothing of value is coming from them, you're a wildly inefficient defender and probably cause more harm than you do good. When we take a look at his defensive action map, it really reinforces this idea. Most of his interventions occur inside the left defensive channel and in the centre of the box as well. It's a clear concentration around his own box and within his own box, and it suggests excellent positioning. Rather than chasing attackers all over the pitch, he's consistently defending the spaces that matter the most. The half spaces between his right-sided defender and his left-sided defender, or his right back and his left centre-back, or his left back and his right centre-back. He's defending the dangerous area and is highly efficient at it. We can see high numbers in clearances and recoveries. Interestingly, very, very, very few challenges lost. Look at that. 2 challenges lost. This points towards unbelievably good judgment and decision making. He generally chooses the right moments to engage. Young defenders often are very rash and dive into tackles way too early. Jérémy Jacquet appears to be a lot older than his years would suggest, and appears to be much more comfortable and more patient when out of possession and facing down an attacker. That is going to be one of the best parts of his game to Liverpool, especially when you're paired up alongside somebody like Virgil van Dijk. Virgil van Dijk not having to hold your hand means Virgil van Dijk can be the best defender that he can be, and if he's the best defender on the pitch, you are more than likely going to win the game. Liverpool need competent, young, aggressive, hungry defenders to be able to come in, and Jérémy Jacquet seems to fit that bill to a T. When we look at his defensive duels, and these are both possession adjusted, obviously you can see massive outliers like Ibrahima Konaté and Virgil van Dijk. Like they're dueling monsters, the two of them. Jérémy Jacquet is a little bit different in that sense not because of a lack of his want or his skill to be able to complete these, but more it's his ability. He plays in a back three most of the time as a central defender in Stade Rennais, which means he would more so be winning the second ball rather than winning the first ball. And you would see in a back two, he would be more winning the first ball rather than winning the second ball. That's why you see both Ibrahima Konaté and Virgil van Dijk where they are. They play in a back four rather than a back three. In a back three, the 2 centre-backs either side of you do the defensive dirty work, and the central defender then mops up everything after that and mops up the second balls. That's what Jérémy Jacquet does. He is not necessarily winning a lot of duels with regards to both aerially and on the ground. However, if we go back and take a look at his defensive numbers from that defensive actions chart, he has a high number of clearances, recoveries, which leads me to think that his defensive duties and his defensive ability, his defensive numbers more so get bolstered by the fact that he's cleaning up everything, such as the second balls. Something that Liverpool really struggled with last season was getting those second balls. We had no problem winning the first duel, it was getting the second ball. But looking at this, he obviously isn't as vertically promising as Virgil van Dijk, or he isn't as, ground dominant as in Bastoni, but he wins enough either side of it to be comparable and for it to be good enough to be able to improve upon. If this is his floor and he's only 20 years old, then developing him physically over the next couple of seasons will be paramount towards this. He's on par with his defensive aerial duels with the likes of Harry Maguire, Marco Senesi, Nico Schlotterbeck, slightly off the likes of Dean Huyson and Mark Gahey. You can see obviously that more prominent physical defenders that will be playing predominantly in back fours will be up ahead of him, such as Gabriel Magalhaes, but Jean-Paul Van Hecke, William Saliba, Van Dijk and Konaté obviously. But then you take a look at guys that would have played in back threes. You can see Mark Gahey is quite close to him there, and Jarell Kwanzaa plays in a back three as well with Bayer Leverkusen. So Liverpool will probably still want to develop him physically over the next season or two, but the groundwork is already there for him to become an elite duel-winning defender. No young defender is anywhere near complete. Jérémy Jacquet clearly isn't. The biggest limitation that he currently has is probably physical dominance. Against elite strikers, he'll occasionally lose aerial battles against stronger opponents, possibly ground battles as well. He'll need to improve his consistency in that manner. Young defenders naturally experience fluctuations in their concentration. Decision making under extreme pressure is another area that only develops with experience. There are also moments where he could slightly be maybe a little bit more aggressive, attacking loose balls a bit earlier, but these are entirely normal developmental areas for a 20-year-old centre-back. None appear to be fundamental weaknesses. They all appear to be decision-making refinements that are very easy to be able to be coached into an intelligent player that he already has shown himself to be. When you take a look at the previous video that I made about Victor Munoz, you can't teach effort. That has to be something that willingly comes from the player. You can't teach a physical profile. That again has to be something that the player is naturally gifted with. You can refine decision making and you can teach decision making. One of the interesting aspects of his statistical profile is who he sort of compares against. You can see Murillo there from Palermas. You can see Laporte from Athletic Bilbao. It's quite revealing. Laporte stands out immediately. Like Jacquet, Laporte built his reputation on intelligent positioning, progressive passing and composure. He's similarly aggressively stepping into midfield while comfortably progressing possession. He isn't identical to him, but stylistically he sits comfortably near him. So, where exactly does Jérémy Jacquet fit? Well, initially he's unlikely to walk straight into Liverpool's strongest starting 11 if we sign a new centre-back, but as it stands, he probably walks in as the second choice with Virgil van Dijk in that back four right now, with Giovanni Leone coming off a season-ending injury that hampered his whole debut season, and Joe Gomez probably not being able to play multiple games in a row. However, Liverpool play an enormous amount of matches. Rotation is inevitable. Long term, Jérémy Jacquet gives Andoni Iraola another defender capable of maintaining his Liverpool possession identity without sacrificing defensive quality, and perhaps even more importantly, he is arriving before reaching his peak. Like I've said previously, if this is his floor, imagine his ceiling. Liverpool aren't buying the finished product, like they weren't buying the finished product with Victor Munoz. They are banking on development, and both of these players developing to elite standards over the next number of years. So, speaking of ceiling, where does Jérémy Jacquet's ceiling sit? The underlying profile is really, really encouraging. He already combines his above-average possession, his strong quality in passing, his intelligent positioning, his reliable defensive value, elite defending space, and excellent age profile. Those foundations, as I mentioned, are so difficult to teach. If the physical development continues, his aerial game continues, and if his experience sharpens his decision making, Liverpool may have stolen one of Ligue 1's best young defenders before his price has really truly exploded. And to get him in this current market for £60 million, when you see players with 1 year left on their deals in Jean-Paul Van Hecke going for nearly the same price, that is absolute lunacy that Liverpool were able to get this done back in January. So, Jérémy Jacquet isn't arriving to be with the hype of some of Europe's biggest teenage stars. He's producing not so much at headline reel defending levels every week, but instead he's something that Liverpool have become exceptionally good at identifying. A technically gifted young player whose underlying numbers suggests significantly more potential than his reputation currently reflects. He already looks so comfortable in pressure related ball progressing and doing it against pressure in his face. He prevents danger efficiently, he reads the game well, and he fits many of the tactical demands of Andoni Iraola that he places on centre backs. You need to be able to progress the ball well. A lot of the creation needs to come from the centre backs from deep, and you need to be able to defend efficiently. Jacquet does that. Will he become the next Virgil van Dijk? Impossible to predict. However, signs on the data and his underlying profile, Liverpool fans have absolutely every reason, myself included, to be very, very excited for what the future is going to hold for this player. It may not be the biggest signing that we've made so far, but in a few years' time we could look back on this and it could be one of the absolute smartest signings we have made in a long time. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please do not forget to like and subscribe for more in-depth player analysis. Let me know in the comments down below, how do you think Jérémy Jacquet is going to fit into Liverpool's success long term, and could he eventually become the Virgil van Dijk successor? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.